Disclaimer. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only and should not be considered as facts. Nothing that is said about any person, organization, gaming company, or sport topic in general should be taken as facts, as well as any talk about any political, religious, or medical topics. As for medical topics, at all times you should speak to a licensed medical professional before any opinion is considered. Everything that is said on this podcast is opinion-based only. Viewers and listeners' discretion is advised.
Welcome to the Esports Lounge podcast. This podcast is long-form conversation hosted by DrVtach with the top guests in the world of esports, bringing you everyone from owners, pros, semi-pros, former pros, and content creators of many games. So let's give it up for the one and only DrVtach.
Well, folks, today we got a special guest, a very good friend of mine, the one and only Supr. How's it going, man?
Howdy. How's it going? Been a minute since I've been on here.
Yeah, man, it's been a while. Well, actually, you were the first on the DrVtach show on the podcast, and then now you're the first on the rebrand.
Yeah, I'm excited for the next name that I'll come on for.
No, it's not going to be no more names, man. You know why? The reason why I changed it, because a lot of people that were trying to search for me, right? And I'm telling them it's DrVtach, and they'll go into these searches for podcasts, and some people were getting confused. They said, "Oh, I thought that was have to be medical related or something like that." I said, "No, it's about esports." It says, but it says doctor. I was like, "Oh God, that's my gamer tag." And then it caused quite a few confusion. Not a lot of people here in the United States that know me, they were fine. But people like from EU and stuff like that, they could not, grasp it. That was my gamer tag. So a lot of people assumed it was something medical related. So I said, okay, let me switch it now. Let me put it something that has esports in it and gaming, that when people look at, they will know, okay, it's about gaming just by the glance of it. So that's why I changed it.
Yeah, I think from a person just searching who doesn't know anything about the podcast, it's probably better to have esports in the title, just because they'll search like esports if they want to try to see if there's any esports podcasts out there. So it makes sense.
Yeah, that's why I mainly did it. I mean, I researched, went online and started looking at other podcast names and stuff, and got advice by this person that helps podcasters out and try to help them, grow and stuff like that. And they say your name is so important because that's what they look for. And sometimes if they find it attractive, they'll click on it. If they don't find the name attractive or something, or serious, they won't click on it. It's really weird. It's really weird. It's like Joe Rogan has the experience. Joe Rogan experience, just kind of brings a little bit of suspense. I think with
those, it's more so Joe Rogan is like he's a celebrity. So having he just has his name in it, right? I think a lot of those kind of podcasts they just have the person's name. Like there's a guy named Andrew Huberman. He has like a title for his podcast, but it's Andrew Huberman, blah, blah, blah. So I think if you get to a level of notoriety or something, then obviously it will help because you just have essentially a celebrity like in the title. So people will be interested in listening just because it's associated with that person.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. Because, nobody knew who DrVtach is. Yeah. Some people knew, but not a lot of, Americans do. But not that many, They're just like, who the heck is DrVtach?
Yeah, Joe Rogan's a little more
known
than DrVtach.
Very well known.
One or two, few more people.
Yeah. You could put any pro out there. They still, even Jinxie, could probably, he has his own podcast as well. But, next to Joe Rogan's, there's nobody. He's still number one. Mm-hmm. It's like Theo. Theo has that... I listen to him from time to time. Theo, he has The Weekend or something like that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
it's pretty wild. What's up with your podcast? What's going on with that?
I haven't made one in a while, to be honest. I just don't have a lot of time for it. And it was a podcast that's essentially only Siege related. And I would just try to, if there was something like newsworthy that happened, I would just try to talk to that person within like a relative time frame. But I just haven't done it in a while because I haven't had time really.
Yeah. Yours is really neat too. I checked it out once. I was like, man, this is nice. This is nice. So, Seth, we got a lot of questions here, a lot of stuff that's popped up with the Sonics. You made some big changes here, but I have one big question because I see things differently probably than a lot of people. My thing is when I read your post about, I mean, I saw what you were the video that you posted on Twitter, and you're a manager, but now you're going to be coaching for the team. Now, me looking from the outside, I see that like a little bit, okay, why? Is it that, something happened with you and the owner? The owner say, hey, listen, you better do something, or you can say goodbye, and you're like to the point, okay, I got to go ahead and coach this now.
Well, I saw you say that, and also I'm not the manager of Rainbow Six. I'm the general manager of the Sonics. So I'm not a team manager. I saw in your post you called me the team manager. I'm the general manager of the org. So it's a little different of a position. And in regards to coaching, Lauren retired, and I'm already familiar with basically the core of the team with Richie, Ambi, and Pablo. So honestly, it was just the easiest transition for me to coach rather than try to find a new coach and 2 new players, because I've always kind of obviously I wasn't the coach, but I helped out every now and then. And like truthfully, there's probably no coach who would know more than I do about Siege. So I thought it was the easiest transition for now, and probably at the end of the year, we'll reevaluate if I want to keep doing it or hire an actual coach if I decide I don't like it, because technically right now I'm doing 2 separate jobs because I'm also obviously still the general manager of the Sonics, so I'm filling a coaching role and that, so it could be a little much at times, but it's just the ease of the move more than anything with Lauren retiring.
Yeah, well, I was meaning, you kind of caught me on that one because I was typing it quick and forgot to put in org. I put in team because I'm thinking Team Sonics, but that was my bad.
No, you're fine. I just wanted to clarify because there is a difference between a team manager and like an organizational general manager. So I didn't want there to be confusion.
Yeah, confusion. Yeah. So everybody that's listening, he is the complete org for Sonics. That means the organization. He's the general manager of all the games that they are involved in. So he's involved with all the players. By the way, congrats with the PUBG, man.
Thank you. That was, that's more, you're congratulating me, but I'm not playing. That's more of a congratulations to them to win. They won it this year, but they also won it last year. So that's back to back at basically the biggest event.
They won it last year
prize
too?
Pool. Yeah.
Jeez. Back to back. They're trying to do like BDS.
I think they're a little bit better than BDS if we're comparing the relative games.
Yeah. Well, BDS on Rainbow won 3 times, right?
Well, the PUBG team for Sonics has won, I believe, like around $3.5 million. So they're, I would say, more dominant in their game than BDS is in Siege.
Okay, wow.
There's probably few teams in any sport as dominant as the Sonics PUBG team is. Jeez. Over a long period of time, at least.
Yeah, them winning the World Cup, that's amazing. That's amazing. Because isn't that cup is like the most paid? More than SI?
More than SI. I mean, it's a different game, but in PUBG they won 700,000 this year, I think, and 600,000 last year. But I think it
As in prize pool, I mean.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Prize pool. SI prize pool is like 3 million total, I think.
Jeez.
But obviously, PUBG and Siege are different games.
Yeah, totally different. Totally different. Now, it would have been nice that the Sonics would have won it and the PUBG.
Yeah, we made the qualifier final to make it, and we had 2 chances, and we lost, which is unfortunate. Because a little known fact is, even if our team would have got last place if they had qualified, if we would have qualified, the Sonics organization would have won money in the World Cup. I guess the like club standings, because we got so many points from our PUBG team winning. So all Rainbow Six had to do was literally make it. They could have got any placing, and we would have won some money, but. You know, we choked a little bit. It's okay. It happens.
Now, was that the cause of the change, or was this the change team roster on Rainbow? Was it, ongoing for a long time that you were seeing certain things like, okay, I need to improve this because this is the final straw?
I mean, obviously, Sonics Rainbow Six has had... basically since 2020, maybe 2021, a pretty dominant, at least North American league presence where we make every major, and we've had some success at majors, a couple top 4s, obviously a couple deep runs at SI. So our team doing poorly in stage 1 this year is, from Sonic's perspective, it's kind of unacceptable because we don't see ourselves as a team that is not competitive. Obviously, we did make some roster changes that I think backfired a little bit, and there was and this is credit to Merc and Adam, who are former players now, but were joining our team then. They kind of brought to light some issues that were going on behind the scenes that staff was unaware of. So once we kind of squashed that out, we brought Pablo back to the starting lineup, who honestly should have probably never been benched, and we had a lot more success with that lineup with Grixer instead of Geo, where we made the major finals for the major qualifier finals, and then obviously, as I already mentioned, the EWC quals. But I think we still had some issues as a team. And we just also didn't have as much practice as some of the other teams because they because we did bring Pablo in basically after stage 1 was already over.
Wow. Now, my thing is, you had Citizen, you brought in Merc, and now you're bringing in Troy. Those are top 3 players in the world.
I wouldn't say that, no.
Well, Merc was always in the ranking. There was a time that he was number 2? Citizen was...
I don't know what that means. No, they're all very good players, but if you're talking about the Siege GG rankings, I don't think that's the case. But I mean, they're obviously they all have had a lot of success in Siege.
Yeah, it's on the ranking system.
Well, Merc won. Citizen hasn't, but Merc and Troy have obviously won SI.
Okay.
But Merc won SI in 2022, and it's 2024, and it was a completely different team. In terms of the CGG rankings, I don't know that Merc was ever on the top 10. I know that Citizen has been. And I don't think Troy has been, but Troy plays a role where he's in IGL, so I think it'd be a little bit difficult. Actually, so Merc was ranked number 6 in 2022. And Citizen was ranked number 6 in 2021.
Okay.
Grixer was ranked 4th in 2022 and 7th in 2023. But again, I don't really... Those kind of rankings, I don't really... You're not picking a player up because of that, essentially. They don't really mean anything.
Oh, okay. Okay, so, I mean, they obviously have to have a very good stat before you pick them up. I mean, Merc, without a doubt, has very good stat. I'm really don't know what the world happened. I mean, things happen. If some things don't work out, they just don't work out. And it's not a one man team, you know. But
well, when you like, just because a player's been good in the past doesn't necessarily mean they continue to be good. And that's not, you know, I'm not saying that was the case, but it also becomes a mix of when players are joining new teams or fitting into different systems, they're not always going to necessarily be a natural fit in terms of roles or chemistry with the players on the team.
yeah.
So it doesn't always necessarily it's not just like, oh, this player is better than this player, so the team will be better, because that doesn't necessarily play out that way, because, you know, it's a team game. It's a game like Siege is a game with a lot of strategy and things like that in it. So it is important to have the right roles, to have an IGL who can kind of be adaptive and those sort of things. And I think, honestly, primarily, and this has kind of been the case since we left, but I would say more of or since I left, but probably more of a case this year, is just being able to be more adaptive in the round rather than like what I would call pre-rehearsed stuff, which is like you have a strat and this is what you're doing and you just called it before the round. You have to be able, in the current Siege, where it's more fast-paced and things like that, you have to be able to kind of change what you're doing on the fly based off of what you see. And if you don't, if you're unable to do that, then you have a ceiling of what you're able to achieve, I think.
Yeah. It was kind of wild. A lot of people were confused to why, but you know, at the end of the day, it's all business. I was watching Hard Knocks.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched the Hard Knocks of I think it was the Dolphins, the Giants, and I was like, these guys are playing. They're making money. Yeah, they're making money when they get signed up, but they're walking on eggshells every single day they go play, because any little thing they get injured, boom, you're benched, and that's it. You know, and more likely, if that secondary does better, you're out.
Yeah.
You know, the contract is done, you know, and it's over with. So it kind of, I feel that type of same, you know, mentality in esports and how organizations run their business as well. You're just as good as your last match. So you better do really good. If not, you know, I don't care who you are, what name you are, how popular you are. You're going to be out because we need to make money.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm not the kind of person who's necessarily going to compare esports to like professional sports, just because the salaries and the amount of money invested in things like that are at a much higher level. But at the end of the day, in any kind of sport, the name of the game is winning for most teams. So if you're not having results in the game, then, you know, you're not going to be able to keep going with that team, right? So you have to keep making changes to try to get to a point where you feel like you're competitive, or at least your team is improving. Because I think that's the biggest thing, is having a team where you feel like you see improvement, or you feel like you see the effort for improvement, and you're not like stagnating.
Now, question, Seth, is when Soniqs goes against other NA players, an NA team versus a Brazilian team or a European team, do you see a pattern like they do better versus Europeans? Do you see them doing better against Brazilians, or do you see them going against there's got to be, you know,
I think there is a difference. Yeah, so obviously when you're inter-regional, which is you're playing your own region, typically you'll do better against those teams. Some might do worse because you just are used to playing them more. There are, and I think it's different by player or by team, but some players or teams do better internationally, or they do better against like Brazil, or they do, but like the old speaking of like Merc, the old TSM roster was really successful against Brazilian teams for whatever reason.
Wow.
And I, you know, that just probably comes down to a mix of play style and like understanding of the Brazilian teams. But yeah, there definitely can be something that goes into like international tournaments in terms of like the matchups when you're playing other regions. I think a lot of it as well comes down to like experience, because it is true, like if you've never been to an international event and then you go and you're all of a sudden playing against a different region with a much more aggressive play style or something like that, and like to be frank, like in your region there are some very good players, but there are a lot of players who are also not good enough to be at an international level. So when you go to an international event, the majority of those players are like essentially the elite players in the world. So it's also just kind of some of the stuff you can get away with when you're playing teams in your own region, you won't be able to get away with when you're playing players who, you know, they won't miss if you try to make a play on them or something.
Yeah. That's I always wonder about that, because I notice that certain teams do better against other teams, and they do horrible against other teams in different regions. And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Why they could beat Brazilians, but they can't beat.
Well, it could also be like, because Siege is a game where there's 9 maps in the Pro League pool, it could also be a matchup dependent kind of thing where like if you and the team you're playing play like Bank Cafe and Oregon when that was in the pool, you know, Brazil has traditionally probably been better on Oregon and Cafe than North America. So, like, if those are your 3 best maps and you're just matching up, then maybe that's not a matchup that's great for you. Whereas, like, against EU, it probably goes in favor of North America. So there's just a lot of factors that I think could play into those kind of matchups, honestly.
Did Merck kind of, like, shed some light in how to handle Brazilian style?
I mean, we didn't make any international events with Merck, so it didn't.
Well,
get to
I know that, but I mean, did he get advice? Okay, guys, how if we were to ever face Brazilians, how do we play against them?
I think you're more concerned with first making it, and then once you make it, then you can kind of get into that area where it's like, if we're playing against this team, it's kind of what you do. But you have to also remember, Grixer and Rexen are 2 of the most experienced players in the league as well, so they've also had a lot of experience playing against those kind of teams at this point. So, you know, it's I mean, especially now with Canadian on the roster, there's probably not many teams with as much international experience as we have.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. Wow. What do you thought about the SI in Brazil?
I mean, in terms of crowd, it was probably a great environment. I know our team, they was saying they were like all shouting at them and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I think it was important for the esport to see how much passion fans can have for Siege when they're able to, you know, get together. And I think since then it's kind of just, you know, the major after that I thought had a pretty good crowd as well. So it's kind of, you know, there's not many international tournaments a year now in Siege. So when we have those, the next major's in Montreal. Now it's like kind of on the North American crowd to kind of show out that that they have the same sort of passion that the Brazilian or the European fans have.
Yeah, that was kind of wild, man. I'm gonna tell you, I never seen an event like that.
Well, I think it helped too that the finals were both Brazilian teams, and like the best team in the world at that time was also Brazilian, because I know I've seen in other games where like if the Brazilian teams get eliminated early, a lot of the fans just don't go anymore. Like they don't, if it's not a Brazilian team, they don't really care. So I think Siege did look out a bit in the idea that, you know, the teams who were competitive there were primarily Brazilian teams.
That is true. I never thought about it that way. I know you know, FaZe and W7M. That was really crazy. I was like in shock. I was like, wow, what the heck is this? You see old people out there just going crazy. And I was like, man, I think families, everybody's there. I mean, they were just celebrating it like never before. I mean, it was I was in shock. I mean, it was very tense, and the way how W7M won that final final match. It was crazy. They just, if they would have lost once, that was it.
Yeah, I think you could even say that FaZe haven't necessarily recovered from that loss, because so far this year, at least, they've been competitive, but they haven't really been, I would say, as competitive as they have been in previous years, at least at the international tournaments. I think they have 2 top 8 placings, which for them is honestly kind of, they're a team that usually are like top 4 making the finals, things like that.
Correct. Now, they still have the same roster?
Yeah, they've had the same team for a while.
Oh, okay. Wow, that must have hurt them real bad then.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
blowing that kind of lead for the biggest tournament in the game is, and it's like against your countrymen. It's like literally a team from your own region. It definitely, I would be pretty devastated. I can't lie.
Yeah. I mean, they were what,
They were 6-1 up. They only had to win
6-1
one
up.
round, and they lost 6. I think they ended up losing like 7 straight.
7.
but,
Yeah, 7 straight. 7 straight. They just
Pretty rough.
needed one. Just
Yeah.
one. And then one of them were brothers.
Yeah.
That was even worse. It's like, oh, God, I felt bad for him. I was like, I mean, but either or, somebody's got to lose.
Yep.
You know, somebody's got to lose.
I mean, and the truth is, like, that W7M team deserved to win SI. They've been, like, pretty much the best team in the game for 2 years. So far this year, they haven't been. But, yeah, I thought they deserved to win the World Championship.
Yeah, if they came back like that, they deserved it.
Mm-hmm.
They deserved it. Sad Sonics didn't go up there. I mean, I would have liked to see an NA team to make it up there at the end.
Yeah, we got top 6, which honestly I think was good for us because we came off of the major the stage before where we won the North American League, and then we got top 16, and then we made the roster change to bring Ambi for Gunner. So getting top 6 was a pretty big improvement for us, and then obviously we kind of reset a bit after that. But yeah, I think for the Sonics team that was a bit of a overachievement, honestly, because I did not have great expectations for us heading into that event based off of what I had seen for practice. And I do think maybe we lucked out a little bit in terms of our, like, the teams we played. I think maybe we had a little bit of an easier pathway, but at the end of the day, top 6 is top 6. You can't knock the achievement.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, that was a big wave as well. And social media about Gunner, being replaced with Ambi.
Well, I think at the time everybody agreed with it. It's like hindsight now that, like, why would you replace Gunner? But for us, I have literally never said that I thought Gunner was like a bad player or I wouldn't have got him in the first place on the team. It was that the team that we had with Gunner just never mixed, and we kept trying different roles and different positions and things like that, and it was always off. And it was in Ambi is like kind of seen as like a prodigy for Siege, for like North American Siege. So I thought it was a good opportunity to get a player like him, and it was like sort of the same roles on that version of the team as well. So I just thought it was time, because I had an opportunity to potentially get Ashen on the Sonics. I think it was a stage before, maybe 2 stages before, for Gunner, and I decided to pass it up because I know Gunner's a good player, and I thought he deserved more of an opportunity to kind of get used to our system and things like that. But I just felt, after missing out on Ashen, I didn't want to miss out on Ambi, and we were a good team with Gunner. We had 2 top 4 majors, but we also had a top 16 SI and a top 16 major. So it was, and we had to, and people forget, but we also had to qualify for one of the majors through the last chance qualifier. So that team was just, in hindsight, I don't think it was necessarily all on Gunner. Obviously, it was on, the group as a whole. But that team was always a team to me that didn't have a lot of chemistry or teamwork. It just had 5 very good players. So they would, they could do really well because they're all so good, but they were also kind of at a ceiling in that top 4 range. And also why there was so much inconsistency, because I wouldn't necessarily say it was a great team. It was a great collection of players that I put on the team, but it just never like clicked as a whole.
Yeah. Chemistry is so important. I know this is detrimental.
Well, I've always said like you don't have to be friends with your teammates, but it is better to be friends. It's better to like your teammates,
correct,
than treat them as colleagues. Now, if you can separate your dislike for certain players or whatever, and you show up to job and it's like no big deal, and then after practice you could go home and you're just like, oh, I fucking hate that guy. He's so annoying. Like, sure, that's okay, but from my experience and on that team, we were not able to separate the friendship and like our feelings towards each other. It was, some of the players just didn't get along, and we weren't able to necessarily like separate that, and it just made for, I wouldn't say a toxic environment, but it was just an environment that it could have been better if we liked each other, essentially.
Now, question: Sonics has a team psychologist?
No.
Okay. I think certain teams have, certain orgs have.
We have had in the past at one point, but honestly, from our experience with it, and maybe it was just a bad experience, maybe somebody else would prove to be more efficient or effective. But it honestly ended up creating more issues than like solving them. But of course, there's nothing wrong. Like, I of course have nothing wrong with, nothing against the team psychologist or obviously individual psychologist. It's just our experience with it wasn't really effective.
Yeah, it depends the psychologist as well to see how they handle things. Some are good and some are not. It's like a doctor. You got ones that you just like, okay, I need a second opinion, and there's those that you don't need a second opinion. You're gonna go by what that doctor says. And team psychologist for me is very important. But if you got one that sucked, that's bad.
I think it's important just to create. Well, if you have a new group, if you have a more established group, it's kind of harder to like introduce that. But I think it's important to try to create an environment where everybody is comfortable talking about any issues they have, and they feel like if they bring something up, they're not going to get roasted or in trouble or something. Because at the end of the day, if you're a professional player, you're an adult, you need to be mature, and you have to have a mature professional environment. So if there are issues, you can't just bottle them up and get in somebody's DMs and talk about people behind their back. Like, you need to bring the issue up and try to solve it. Because if you don't solve it and you don't bring it up, then how is it ever going to be dealt with? It'll just continue to agitate you until it blows up, essentially.
Now, question. Now you're bringing in Troy. Troy's coming from DZ. There were some issues there. And he even posted it on Twitter. He was talking about certain things and somebody talked back, So clearly he's heard about it. He's hurt. And I can understand why, He put a lot of dedication, time,
he's
blood,
hurt,
sweat, and
like
tears.
HURT?
Yeah, hurt.
Okay.
So, I see that, there's a wound there. So him coming from that and coming to the Sonics, are you kind of like concerned, making sure that he's got that all resolved or anything? Because he does portray like an alpha male, this very dominant type of person. I have my opinions about him. I don't know him that well. I think he's a phenomenal player. I think he accomplished a lot, but there are certain things that I reviewed and I listened and I watched him. I just feel like if he doesn't feel he has this leadership and he has control of the team, things probably won't work out for him. If you understand what I mean.
Yeah, I don't. Well, one, I don't think that he is hurt by what happened with Dark Zero. I think he feels disrespected. Considering how long he was on Dark Zero and what he did for the organization in terms of their individual achievements, to then be essentially released or benched without even a discussion of the issues. And I'm not going to get into the issues because I've seen a lot of people like saying this or that. And I think some of it's like somewhat close to what actually happened, and some of it's just like totally not close. But like to me, Troy is the best North American player of all time. He's, you know, I would say most people would say him or Fabian is the greatest IGL Siege has ever had. And Troy has won a championship on 3 different teams across 3 different eras of the game. So it's not just like he was on a member of a great team. Like he is the great team. He makes great teams. And, you know, sometimes things do run its course, but I won't lie. When I initially heard that Troy was not going to be in Dark Zero anymore, I had assumed he was just retiring. And then I heard that he was benched, and I was like, I couldn't believe it. I basically immediately reached out just to see what was going on because, you know, some of the things you were saying about Troy is like, those are things of a leader. Like, you need a leader on your team. Somebody has to hold people accountable. And like, truthfully, leaders aren't always necessarily the nicest guys. Like, I was an IGL. I was a pretty good IGL. I wouldn't say I was anywhere near Troy's success, obviously, in terms of being an IGL. But I was also not a very nice guy. And there were definitely people who would say that I crossed lines or whatever. And to me, and this is, you know, I'm probably biased in how I see this just because of how I am. But to me, the leader of your team holding you accountable or holding the team accountable is something you need. And if you can't deal with that, I think you're soft.
Yeah.
I think you have to be able to deal with, because if anybody in Siege history has the credibility or the reputation to be able to hold you accountable or to be able to kind of scold you, you know, it's Troy, right? So like, I personally think that, you know, if you felt disrespected or whatever the issues may be, that's something you talk about. That's not something you're like, I don't want to play with this guy, because I just take that as being soft. I just don't think that Troy is a player you just give up on because he was mean to you, because it's like, that is what he is. He's a leader. He's an in-game leader of teams. Like, you need somebody like that. And if you don't have that, then the inmates are running the asylum, and you don't have organization, and you don't have, you know, like, no offense to Dark Zero, but before Troy, their level of success was not what it was with Troy. And we'll see how it looks without Troy now.
Yeah. I think they're going to have to really step up to the plate now and do something. Because
I mean, it's a bold move. Like, you know, 100%, it is a bold move by them, and we'll see how it works out. And even if they do end up, like, you know, improving or staying as good as they are, because they do have very good players, whether they have Troy or not. So they're still going to be a very good team. To me, I just think that at least the way it was handled, where from what I understand, like, essentially no discussion was held or nothing was said. It's like, at the very least, Troy deserves that level of respect, I would say, where you at least have a conversation about it and then make a decision.
Isn't esports, these orgs go by the 3 rules of warning, like 1, 2, 3, this is your final warning and goodbye? Or
I don't know if teams are operating under the baseball strike system, but obviously it goes, I'm sure it's different from org to org. I've always tried to be very upfront with the team, just because I don't like the shadiness. I've always been a very direct person. Like, I've told the team, and maybe, you know, maybe sometimes it hurts us a little bit, but I've told the team, like, I'm making a change. Like, this isn't acceptable. The team's not good enough. I'll make a change, and I'll let you know what's going to happen. Like, after E3, I said that to the team. I said, guys, you know, I know this is a tier 2 tournament, and it doesn't really matter that much, but to me, the lack of effort we're showing here, our attitudes about it, shows a lack of professionalism. And if you don't have the, like, passion in you to, or like the self-respect that you don't want to lose a tier 2 tournament, you can't be on my team. So there's going to be changes.
Yeah. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. I was happy that my friend Richie is still on. I was like, oh, thank God.
Well, I've always seen like rumors of Rexen being benched or released, and I mean, Rexen to me is a core player for us. I basically see him here as long as I'll be here, and that's kind of it in regards to that. I won't lie. Gio wanted to bench Rexen, and I told him no. And the only way Gio would play with Rexen if he was on Heartbreach, so that's what we did. But like, Rexen's not a player that, as long as I'm around, Rexen's a player that I plan to have around as well.
That's really good to know. He's such a nice guy. His character, really nice. I mean, we keep in contact quite a bit, and we'll DM each other back and forth. And I know I reached out to you. Now we could talk about it, but you know, because there's stuff. Whatever you tell me, I just keep it between you and I. I'm not of the age to start, hey guys, you know what happened? You know, oh, guess what? You know, he told me this guy is not going to get banned. He's not going to get kicked. He's going to still stay. You know, I don't talk to none of that stuff. That's none of my business. But, you know, when you told me, no, he's still in, and I was like, okay, whew, good.
Yeah.
I mean, he's out of everybody, I'm the closest to, and we always kept in contact, even when he went through an injury, not, you know, I think a year or so, two ago. And I was giving him advice. I told him, listen, if anything, you could talk to my wife and she could explain. He got injured so many times. He dropped I don't know what he did to his foot. He got injured. Then he had carpal tunnel. He got so much stuff. I was like, dude, my gosh, you're a train wreck. But, you know, but I was so happy that he wasn't out. I'm so happy you feel that way about him, because he is such a genuine good guy. And I'm not saying this because I know him for a while, you know, but I'm just saying it because I know a lot of players. I know a lot of players' attitudes. I know their character. I know people. I'll tell you this. This is really crazy. I know people that I told them, hey, let me get you on the pod and all this and that. And they go, no, I'm not interested. I'm like, okay. Like cold, cut, and blunt. They don't even care. You know, I had one that even told me, I don't follow nobody on Twitter unless you're a pro. I was like, that's okay, fine. As soon as they noticed that I started having all these people on the podcast, I get the follow. And then all of a sudden, hey, whenever you would like me to come on the show, just let me know. So wait 1 second. Now you're being nice. You know, some people are just jerks. Let's be really honest. A lot of them are just young. They're really cocky. But with Rexen, none of that stuff. I mean, my experience with him, and I'll vouch for him any day of the week. Very genuine, very nice guy, and I'm so happy he's still on Soniqs. I'm so happy that, even to know right now that you have this much appreciation for him, because he is really, truly a good guy. I see him like very loyal. I see him like a Tim Duncan type of guy that sticks to that same team and won't go nowhere. Even if they probably offered him a lot of money, he'll still stick and stay with the same team, same organization. He won't go nowhere.
Well, I think players on our team, or players who have been on our team for a while, know that. Like, we're very transparent, and you'll always know what's going on. So I think there is like a mutual trust between the players and the org that, you know, like, we're essentially going to be looking out for their best interests, and as long as we can. And then, you know, if we make changes, it's never going to be a situation where you're not going to hear about the change directly. Like, you're going to know before time. It's not going to be like, I think, a lot of like backdoor kind of dealings, or we try our best at least in that regard.
Now, all these changes that you made, has it, you know, has the owner has talked to you about it? Like, hey, you know, you're making changes every year. What's going on? I mean, or do you just make these changes without the owner involvement, or do you have to also tell the owner what's going on?
I mean, I obviously tell Darren what's going on, and he's the CEO, not the owner, but I tell him what's going on. But at the end of the day, like, Darren knows that I know what's going on, like, within Rainbow Six and the team. So there's not, like, a lot of questions about it. And, like, sometimes decisions are made for financial reasons. Sometimes decisions are made for, you know, results or player reasons. But yeah, it's obviously you always have to run things by him, but he's not dictating, you know, changes. It's more like, let's say there's a situation where, you know, the team salaries have to be an X amount. Then I just, you know, it's my job to make a team within that amount. And it doesn't really matter to him who's on the team. It's just, it matters that we are within our, you know, a budget, essentially. Like any business, right? Like any team has a budget. You just operate within that.
Have you ever got to the point that you have a player that is like top of the line, really, really good, and you have to like either trade them because the salary is too high on that person?
Well, it didn't come to this, but in 2021, after the season, we were, and this was when I was still playing, but I was also like, I've always kind of like ran the Siege team, even as a player, was that Grixer wanted a pay raise, like a pretty substantial pay raise, which, like, to be fair to him, was probably deserved because he was, in my opinion, the best player that year. And it was more than we were willing to spend. So we actually had agreed to trade Grixer to Dark Zero for NJR. But then that ended up not happening because Grixer didn't want to play for Dark Zero. And then obviously, like, an agreement ended up being reached there. But yeah, that would be, I would say, the closest we've had to essentially like moving on from a player just for financial reasons. Everybody else has, like, if we've ever needed to adjust salaries or payroll, I have a very blunt conversation with them to let them know, like, what the situation is, and it's completely in their hands if they're willing to restructure their contracts. And if not, then, like, obviously we look to do the best we can in finding them a new team. But that hasn't ended up happening.
Okay. I mean, I would assume somebody might want to step up to the plate and say, okay, listen, I'd rather take a pay cut so we could stay all together.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just depends if you believe in the team. Like, you're probably not, if you're a really good player, you probably don't necessarily want to take a pay cut for a terrible team. But if you're, you know, you believe in the team, or you believe, or you like the team, whatever it may be, you're probably more willing to. And also, like, I do think some management doesn't give the players enough credit for, like, actually being realistic and understanding situations. But, like, if you explain, like, what's going on, whether it's, I don't know, your skin sales were poor, so you don't have as much revenue, or your budget's been decreased, like, whatever it may be. And these are just examples, obviously. But, like, if you just explain it to the players, like, they're going to be understanding. It's not like, well, fuck you, I don't care, I want my money. It's like, okay, I mean, that's fine, but, you know, the truth is, in Siege, there's not a lot of positions in Pro League. There's not a lot of spots, and what's your guarantee that you're going to get on a team that you would get paid more money, or that you get on a team at all? You know, because Siege is a team or Siege is a game where it is hard to find spots. There's no promotional system. There's very few spots available. It's a very role-based game. So, like, you also have to be the certain role a team needs. Like, it is hard to get on a new team, no matter how good you are.
That's my thing. How come there's no recruiters for this? I mean, because I kind of feel like it's going towards a little bit more friend-based type of thing, and then try to get some people to come in is really hard. I mean, look, Bolo had his shot because he was streaming, and he became popular in stream while he was streaming, and he was really, really good, got picked up. Look at Ambi, you know, Twitch streamer.
Well, I think if you're good enough, you stand out to a point where you get noticed. I will say there are probably some players who haven't had a fair shot, like, who have had a lot of. I'll use Giddy as an example. Giddey is a player who has won a lot and been a pretty solid player in tier 2 for a long time, and he just hasn't had a pro league opportunity for whatever reason. But part of that is also like, and this is anything, is like you do have to have connections. You can't burn bridges, right? Because like we've had times in the past where I'll just say it, like Eddie on Luminosity was a player in the past that we were thinking about trying out, but him and his stack decided to like randomly talk shit in ranked to Rexen and Yeti at one point. And so like those guys will never get a chance to be on the team simply because Rexen doesn't like them. So like, you know, as a T2 player, like, you know, I know you feel like, oh, you get disrespected, you have to stand up for yourself, whatever it may be. It's like, it's better to be quiet because you never know how people will take. Like, I'm someone where I will never take anything personally because I also make fun of people, and it's also never serious for me. It's like, you know, very rarely when I'm roasting somebody, am I actually being 100% authentic with it. It's like, it's content, right? Like on my stream or something. So I never, like, Troy and I have roasted each other. I have more respect for Troy as a player than any other player in Siege. You know, I've made fun of Troy, like, oh, he's in the basement. Oh, they're so slow. Like, at the end of the day, like, I think Troy is the best North American player to ever play. So, like, you know, me saying that shit is different than how I actually feel, right? It's content. Some people take things a little differently. And I think it's important, especially as a T2 player. I've always said this, but like, it's better not to talk shit up, right? Like, if you're a T1 player and you want to talk shit to T2 players, I wouldn't advise it, but like, at least you're talking shit to a lower level. If you're a tier 2 player and you're trying to make it to that tier 1 player and you're talking shit to the people in the position that you want to get in, like, you're burning bridges by doing that, because some people will hold grudges there.
Yeah, so true. You think that's like what kind of happened with Mr. B?
I think Mr. B did it to himself. I think he basically had control of a team, and he went a little power hungry with that. Like, I think it's okay for me to say this, but and I think people have heard this, but Mr. B once had a tryout with Dark Zero, and he, after the tryout, told Canadian that he didn't think they wanted to win. What? And like, if you're a Challenger League player trying out for a pro league, like a pretty, like, you know, a pro league team with a lot of like legacy, and you're telling the best IGL in the game, you know, one of the most successful players to ever play the game, that he doesn't want to win. Like, I don't know how you think that's gonna play out. And I think he, you know, because he had a pretty decent team there on Beast Coast, and then he made some changes and they got worse. And then I just think he went a little power crazy, I would say.
I had him on the podcast, and to be honest, really, really nice guy.
No, we tried out Mr. B. We thought he was pretty decent. He just didn't fit our roles at the time. But I do think that he did not do himself any favors, because I do think he was a player that had potential as like a leader, but he kind of went from being a leader, from what I understand, to more of like a tyrant, where he kind of ruined himself, honestly. Like, he did it to himself.
That's what I feel. I feel that same way. I feel the same way. Because when we were talking one time, what he really wanted was to try to get his own reality TV team back again together.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they were a good team, but they
were a really good team.
They were a team that was not going to win. Like, they were a good team to a certain point, but you get to a point where there are other teams like with more talent. You're just not going to beat them. Like, they were a T2 team as a whole for a reason.
Well, of course, but if they were all together,
yeah, they would have been a solid team. They would have been middle of the pack, but they're not going to fucking win anything. Like, that team would never beat us, our team at that point.
Have you guys ever tried to scrim them?
Yeah, we scrimmed them when I played and would shit on them, and I'm 100 years old, so like.
Okay. Was Packer using a shotgun?
Yeah, that was prime Packer shotgun too. Yeah.
Yes, I told Packer's the best shotgun player in the game. I mean, geez, Guy could do some crazy stuff on the. Yeah, I'm gonna tell you it's crazy because you just got to know how to conduct yourself. If you, and this goes for everybody that plays it. If you don't conduct yourself right and you don't show respect and you don't show maturity, nobody's gonna pick you up.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people trash
is important. And if you're a younger player, you get a little bit of leeway because you need to learn how to be in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
But, with that, it's not an excuse for immaturity. Like if you're a young player, yes, you do need to learn how to be in a professional environment and what's expected, but you're still expected to be mature.
Correct. Got to be mature. I mean, this is why they have the age limit on this game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of the games, except like Rocket League, you could come in a lot
Well, they
younger.
actually have and I don't know if this is 100% true, but I believe there's an age limit on the game due to where Ubisoft is located. Because Ubisoft are located in Montreal, and I could just be completely making this up, but I believe I heard that because of the laws where Ubisoft is located, that's why the game has an 18. You have to be 18 to be a pro. Because in like CS and those games, you can be a pro when you're 16.
With Counter-Strike?
Yeah. So I believe it's I believe it's due to where they're located. Again, that could be completely me talking out of my ass, but I've heard that before.
That does make sense, but I would assume it has to be 18 because if you can't buy the game at a GameStop or these stores.
No, I don't think that would matter because you can just have your parents
sign
of course, an approval, essentially.
Nor it doesn't have to do with the rating of the game because the back of the game says, for mature.
CS is a mature game, and you can play pro at 16 in that game. Like one of the best players in the world in CS, his name is Donk. He's been a pro since he was 16. He's only 17 right now, and he's like one of the best players.
Really?
Yeah.
16? Jeez. It's like kid already making money so early.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's wild. Man. So, Seth, I got some questions over here. I'm going to read them out because when we posted this on Twitter, got quite a few. So, I want to read them out to you, and I don't want to forget about them.
Okay.
We got here Justin on Twitter says, with the current team and the possible likelihood to secure a major spot, do you feel that potentially of missing SI this year adds a lot more added pressure?
No, I don't think there's added pressure just because there's also a qualifier for SI. But at the same time, I'm sure the guys on the team are aware of, if they want to make SI without playing through the qualifier, we need to do well. We need to qualify for the major and then do pretty well at the major, which, is not a position unfamiliar. We were actually in the same position last year, and then we ended up getting, in 2022. And we ended up getting top 4 at that major and making SI. And that was without a qualifier. So I wouldn't say there's added pressure. It's just like there is awareness of the situation, but at the same time, I don't think it changes anything because you're obviously always going to be playing to try to win the event regardless.
That's good. Okay, we got another question here by Sparkev. I think that's how I pronounce SPRKEV on Twitter. Says on X, or whatever you want to call it, for Supr. What signs / how can you tell if a player is still motivated or if they still has it? Context would be lots of new players for this stage of Pro League across regions. Lots of old heads out seems. Let me read that again.
You're doing your best.
Yeah, my gotta look a little bit further away at my age, man. I'm serious. This time goes so fast. Okay, what are the signs and how can you tell if a player is still motivated or if still has it, to play? Lots of new players for this stage of Pro League across regions. Lots of old heads out there, it seems. There we go.
I think if you're used to dealing with the players every day, you can see or tell if they still have like passion for it. Because I think a big thing is like passion. I think there is a large number of players who have been playing for a long time who, like, you know, they'll show up, scrim one time, and then they won't play the game again until the next day. So I think it's like putting time into the game outside of practice even, and like still looking to improve even if you've been playing for a long time. Because like, let's be honest, over time, as you get older, you're probably not getting better, right? So in theory, you need to work harder to keep your level of performance. So if you're getting older, or you're getting, you know, you've been playing for a long time, but you're doing less, you're not going to get better, you're going to get worse. So I think that's a big thing. And in terms of, you know, how you can like watch a player and see if they still have it, it kind of depends on the player, right? Like some players have been known for mechanical skill, right? So you can see if they're still as good mechanically. Some players have been known for being smart and playing support. So it's like a little different to judge those kind of players. But I do think there is definitely tier 2 talent in all of the regions who probably could replace some of the pro league talent. But I also think to a degree, experience is also underrated, because you do need people with experience. You just need people who I would say are using that experience to be helpful. And like help other, like if you're an older player and you're on a team and you have some younger players on your team, you need to understand that you as the older player, it's your responsibility, or seen as your responsibility, to help the younger players grow. Because if the team is good, right, you're less likely to get replaced. So if you're not helping the other players improve on your team, then you're increasing your own likelihood to get replaced. Because guess what? If I've got a team of all young players and we suck, I'm probably not going to replace the young players. I'm going to replace the old players because we're rebuilding the team. Mm-hmm. So, like, I think it's understanding your position, but at the same time, showing that you still have passion and understanding that it's not the older you get, the less you play. It's kind of the older you get, the more you need to play to maintain your level of skill. Because the game does change. Like if you don't put time in, if you don't put time into it, you will not keep up with the times.
Well, talk about game changing. What do you think about that new operator?
I'll be honest, we haven't even scrimmed on TTS because for some reason the first week of Pro League is on the current version of the game, and then it switches to the new patch. So it's kind of hard to find practice for. It's kind of hard to find TTS practice right now.
Yeah, I tried it out. I didn't like it too much. I mean, I don't know. It's probably because
yeah, I haven't looked at it too much. I feel like I see situations where it could be good, but I don't think it'll be played like 100. Like it won't be played all the time, but I could see it being used in certain situations.
In certain situations, I don't know if anybody in Pro League would use them, but I mean, the robots. It's like I thought if your robot died, they shoot you. You go onto the other robot, like you get a second chance, But no, that's not the case. You die with a robot, you're done. Mm-hmm. The thing is, you got to escape the situation to go onto the other robot before they destroy that one. If your health is low, it's really weird. I just don't. I see it kind of too slow. I don't know. They might. I don't know. I have to play it a little bit more, but I just don't like it that much. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like it's a little bit too complicated for my taste. And then it's like, okay, let's see. Okay, here's another question by an original Mango. In previous co-streams, it seems like Supr's vision for the game was much faster than what Troy's vision for the game manifested in server with DZ. Have things changed to bring their vision closer, or is that something to address in the future?
So I've already kind of touched on this a little bit, but I do think that when I'm being critical of things on stream, it's not necessarily always exactly what I think. It's sometimes a little amped up for content purposes. I will also say, from first-person point of view of hearing Troy and watching Troy, I think Troy is much faster paced than people give him credit for, and I'm not sure if it's just because we have a group of players who are on the more aggressive side compared to his past teams, or he just feels like with the team we have, he can play faster. But I do not think that we will be a slow team. I think we'll have a good mix of our play styles.
Okay, good. And here's another question by Jay on X. As someone coming from one game, I don't know if he's meant one game or game one. One game, what is like being a GM for an entire org and having to oversee multiple teams and different games all at the same time?
Yeah, obviously, certain games I know more about than others. So I think the important thing in terms of that is hiring staff in those games who know the game well and are able to identify like players or play styles and things like that to like help the team. Like in PUBG, we brought on Gunner after I became GM. And we ended up replacing a player on the team eventually too. But like since Gunners became the coach, they did win the Riyadh tournament twice, and they won the last North American like qualifier league. So I think it's more so in games that you don't have like expert knowledge. Obviously, try to learn as much as you can, but also understand that like you're not an expert. So hiring the correct staff who are the experts is important. And if you hire the wrong staff, they could really mess you up because, you know, if they don't know what they're doing and you're trusting them to like help you, you know, build your team, then it puts you in a very poor position.
Didn't Gunner replace?
Not Gunner the player. We have a coach. Our PUBG coach is named Gunner as well.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now I know what we're talking about. Okay. Okay, other question is coming from Kevin Labaz. In terms of strats, I've heard Supr discussing trying to implement a more aggressive but structured style of attacking. Will Supr, as head coach, still dictate that style of play / strats, or will Canadian have more of an input? Just wondering, because DC had a reputation for their slow attacks.
Yeah, I've already kind of touched on that a bit. Obviously, as head coach, I will have input on our play style a bit. But at the end of the day, Troy's the one in the server, and Troy's IGLing. So we're going to trust Troy's vision, especially on the attack side, of like what he wants to do. But like I said, from what I've seen, I do think that we will not be a slow-paced team. Like, I'm sure there will be some slow rounds, but I think we have a good mix of being able to play slow and structured and be able to play fast-paced. And I think that's just because of the collection of players we have. We're going to inherently be a little faster than most teams. But no, I'm not going to sit there and tell somebody who was better as an IGL than I was and who was more successful than me as an IGL that he doesn't know what he's talking about. But I think we have a mutual respect for our understandings of the game to where we can come up with the best version of a lot of the stuff we're trying to do.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Let's say, for instance, you guys are in the final round and he makes a call. I want this guy to go to third floor, an example. In cafe or whatever. I don't want you to go here, go there. But you as a coach, you're seeing like, wait 1 second. Let's not do that because the other team, they like to go on this route. We should go underneath, you know, whatever. What do you do in that type of scenario?
Well, you can't talk in the round if you're a coach, so you just live with the decision. But at the same, like, you have to understand that when you're third party watching, it's also a lot easier to understand what's going on than when you're playing, because when you're playing, you only have your own perspective and the information you're being given to you by your teammates. Whereas if I'm watching in third party, I can see everything. I know exactly where the defense is. I know everything going on, right? So it's easier to see the game from a not playing perspective. And also, like, the best IGL to ever live, like whether it's Troy or Fabian, or if you want to go in like CS and say like Cadian or any like Kerrigan or any of those guys, like no IGL is going to be correct 100% of the time. Honestly, it's probably more of like, you know, a 60-40 that the IGL is going to be right. So you have to be willing, you live and die by the calls you make, but you just trust the calls that more often than not, they're going to work out. And that at the end of the day, that's what it is. You can't get, if there's a bad call or a wrong call, you can't hold the call against the person because, you know, like I said, like they're not going to call everything correctly. It's impossible. Sometimes even the right calls won't work out sometimes because you'll lose a gunfight and things like that. It's just the nature of the game. So you just have to live with the results. And then if you think there was like, you know, if you think you watched something happen and, oh, they could have identified this as an indicator of what to do, then maybe you do like a VOD review where you talk about it after and be like, hey, if you see this, I think we could do this kind of thing. It's not like that was a stupid call. Like that, you know, there's never an IGL making a call for no reason, right? There's a reason they do it. So it's just more so if you disagree with the call or you disagree with what they were seeing, trying to understand what they were seeing, and then maybe you change your perspective on it or discuss like what you were seeing, so then you can, you know, next time you see that, maybe you have a different idea of what you can do.
So basically, after the round ends, that's when you're able to talk to them.
No, a coach cannot talk to the team except during a timeout during a match.
So what are the coaches doing on those stages?
They're watching, and then they call a timeout if they need to, and then they talk to them.
Okay, because I'm like, I see them with the headsets, and I'm thinking,
well, it would be an extremely different game if the coach could talk during the rounds, because then you would just have 5 gunners, and your IGL would just be the coach because he could just IGL as a spectator. Correct.
Okay, I never knew that part of it because I always see them like talking, you know, and fist bumping. Okay, I assume they were talking to the players. They would have talked to them. I would have not know that. So they're the ones that give out a timeout, and that's when you're able to talk to them. That's wild. It's like, okay, timeout, guys. We need to come up with a plan to work things out. Okay, let's see. I think we got another question here. By Moneybags. What are the vibes like with the addition of Troy and Surf?
Yeah, I think the vibes are good. I think there's a lot of like hunger for the team to do well and to improve. And obviously there's not like a ton of time before the season starts, so everybody's putting in a lot of effort and time to try to get to the best version of the team we can be at given the time frame we have.
Okay. Another question comes from R. It's weird names. It says, if Oxygen decided to split up, would you have considered Newers or any other player on that team for pickup? Also, what is the biggest reasons why y'all decided to make yet another change? I think you kind of explained a little bit about, but that part of Newers.
Yeah, I think if the OXG players were free agents, we would have probably taken a look at Newers and Gomez. But at the end of the day, it comes down to how the team fits together and the roles. And I think that Surf fits the roles extremely well. And I'm not sure that either of them would have been able to fill his role better than he has, honestly.
Yeah, because Dream Foxade left. He went to casting and then Dreams afterwards. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always thought of that too. I usually think these players would be picked up pretty quick.
Well, it's like I said earlier, there's limited spots and you need a certain role. And there's also, like, you need connections. So there's a lot that goes into getting on a team if you're not on one.
Do you agree that these teams should start investing into hiring recruiters?
No.
No?
No.
analyze and figure out.
I think the staff on these teams and the players on the team can pretty easily identify who has talent for a higher level. If you're talking about a tier 2 team or something.
Yeah. Because sometimes I would assume it would be good to have somebody that does that type of work and
like I already
alleviate
said,
the stress for you.
Yeah, like I already said, the staff of whatever game is probably an expert within that game, so you would think that they should be able to identify players who could work for their team or have the talent to be successful at like a tier 1 level.
Okay. That's all the questions we got here. I was keep on waiting for more, but that was basically it.
Okay.
Some others are just acting crazy, but yeah, it's at that's wild. What kind of happened with Oxygen? Aren't they like?
I can't really speak on that because I don't know much about it. I know OXG are playing this stage of Pro League for Rainbow Six. I don't know what their plans are after, but from what I understand, the org essentially dissolved. So I don't know past this stage what their plans are as a team.
So the organization kind of just like dissolved in
I mean,
what
it's
sense?
from what I understand. Like, I don't believe they exist outside of like their specific teams. But again, I'm not involved with it, so I couldn't really say.
I mean, I go by what they post on Twitter or something, because I know they're pretty dominant on Call of Duty.
I think their team's all right. Boston Breach. I don't think they're like dominant, but I think they're okay.
They're okay. Yeah. These run and shoot games. Okay, and Seth, thank you so much, man, for coming on. I know I didn't want to take up too much of your time because I know you have something planned up coming here soon. And I want to thank you, and I want everybody to know something. When I needed someone to come on the podcast the most, the only person that stood up to the plate and batted for me is Seth. It's Supr.
Yep.
And you don't know how much I truly appreciate this young man. I mean, trust me, I truly appreciate it. I did the rebrand, and I wanted somebody special, a heavy hitter. I asked multiple people. Everybody was busy or they were out and they couldn't do it. And it comes to a point that I was like, okay, what's going on here? And Supr went ahead and stepped up to the plate and said, yeah, I'll go ahead and do it. So guys, please, please, please follow this man on Twitter and his social. He's going to give it all out right now. Seth, tell everybody where they could find you, about your merchandise, website, everything. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I mean, in regards to what you said, I don't think it's a big deal to have a conversation at the end of the day. But in regards to me, I mean, I don't have much to plug. If you want to follow me, it's Supr Seth with no E in the Supr. If you want to watch my co-streams on Twitch, it's just twitch.tv/Supr. If you're interested in the Sonics, go to sonics.gg. But outside of that, our Rainbow Six Siege team starts our new season on September 5th, which I think is about in a week, maybe a little less than a week from now, which will also be my head coaching debut. So I'm excited to see that. And if we're somehow able to make the major, I will be in Montreal for the major, for those who maybe have never seen me or wanted a chance to meet me, because I know during when I played was the COVID era, so there was never fans. So if we manage to make it, I will be there, obviously, as the coach.
Well, I'm sure with the new roster now, you will make it. I mean, it's a very lethal roster, so it's really good.
Hopefully,
you got a really, really good roster, so I'm sure you're gonna make it, and I'm sure you're gonna have to sign a lot of posters or whatever, jerseys out there. Because I mean, I know I would if I was near you. I was like, okay, Supr, I need your jersey, man. I need a signature. That's the most definite. So, okay, folks, Thank you so much for tuning in. Till next time, guys. Take care. God bless.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Esports Lounge Podcast, bringing you the best conversations from the world of esports. Make sure you like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so that you never miss an episode. See you next time.